Guys, welcome to Cinemaholics. We have an awesome, exciting, packed episode for you guys today, plus something we've been hyping up for this week. Starting last week, we have a special guest, but to start us all off, my name is Ryan Gordon, and I'm a Cinemaholic.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Spencer Henderson, and I am a Cinemaholic.
And our special guest,
I'm Stephen. I'm an aspiring cinemaholic.
He's working on the application process.
Yeah.
Pretty big process these days.
Very lengthy.
We're super excited to have Stephen. He is super insightful. He just graduated, right? Graduated from BYU.
Yep. Woo! I know all this stuff now.
He's a smart dude, though he didn't graduate in film. What's your actual degree called?
Just straight English.
English bachelor.
Yeah. Not even English literature, just English.
And welcome to America.
Thanks, man.
So today we've got, like I said, a packed episode. We're going to try and run through it all. What everyone's been waiting for. Rogue One is today. Got my Star Wars shirt on, and I didn't even wash it. I wore it 3 times this week. We are going to start off with watch lists, then we'll get into Collateral Beauty, and then we'll get into Rogue One, like we say every week. Down in the description below, you can find timestamps for each of those segments. So if you haven't seen one of these movies yet, which I don't know why you would go see Collateral Beauty, but let's say Rogue One, for instance, if you haven't seen it yet, we are going to go into some spoilers later. So you may want to go watch it and then come back and watch this episode. You can then use the timestamps to skip forward to the Rogue One segment. As well, we've got a link to the audio-only version of the podcast, as well as some trailer reactions and some TV stuff and all that cool jazz. So to get us started, Stephen has some watch list. He has 2 things on his watch list. Go ahead and run us through them, Stephen. What's on your watch list?
All right. So this week, I watched The Lobster, and I knew I was going to like this movie, but it ended up being number 1 on my favorite list of 2016, which kind of pleasantly surprised me. Humor was on point. I was excited to find out that Ben Whishaw was in it, and he's amazing. Probably the best skinny actor out there. And so I would give that a 9.5 out of 10. And I think it earned every single one of those points. And I know your thoughts on it, Ryan. Do you have anything you want to share with?
Yeah, I saw this originally at Sundance this year, and then I saw it once again when it went wider release up in Salt Lake. I haven't bought it yet, but it's definitely on my list. It's in my shopping cart that I need to buy. It is in my top 3 of the year. I'm still trying to rearrange them, and as more of these awesome movies are coming out, it's getting more difficult. But we were talking about it last night, and the reason this is so good is because they know what the movie needed to be, and I think a lot of people are going to downplay the acting in this movie, which actually is an incredible feat because it is supposed to be dry. It's supposed to be a dark humor, and Colin Farrell nails it. He is so good, and all of them are great. So that's the biggest thing that stands out to me is how good these actors are because they're able to nail the tone and they're able to nail the humor in the whole thing. Spencer, we kind of talked about it before. Do you have anything else to add?
Yes, sir. No, I love The Lobster. I think that it was a really good movie. It's kind of like a dystopia, freaky in some parts. It really kind of disturbed me in a couple moments. Pretty insightful about modern relationships. And as you said, performances are all good. Kind of a weird, crazy. It's a concept that if you explain it to somebody, it's kind of like they look at you like, what are you talking about, man? Like, is that really the concept of the movie? Kind of like a movie we'll be talking about later on in the show. But yeah, I dug The Lobster. I'd probably say it's probably in my top 15, top 20 of 2016 so far.
Awesome. You have one more, right, Stephen?
Yes, I finally got a chance to watch White Christmas. I'm a huge Danny Kaye fan. If you've never seen Court Jester or Inspector General, make the time for those. You will love them. I really, really liked it. I don't think I loved it as much as some people, just because I'm kind of late in the game for musicals. I'm just now kind of watching some of those. But it's a really fun movie, good music, and it had some serious like post-war themes, which I thought were really cool, and I think that's part of the reason it's still relevant now.
Awesome. I actually was supposed to go and watch the live musical up in Salt Lake last week or 2 weeks ago or something like that, and it never ended up happening. I exchanged my tickets for a different show, but I've heard good things about it. What would you score it?
I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
And
yeah,
so
I've never seen it, but I've heard great things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good movie. I don't know if I'd give it more than that, but it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I've never seen White Christmas either. Just throwing that in there. So I have no insight with this. I've heard of it. I've also been told to watch it, but I'll have to check it out. 8 out of 10 is a pretty okay score. So you got anything else to add, Stephen, for your watch list?
That is all, my dear Spencer.
Okay, then I believe I will move into mine. I'm going to start off my watch list by talking about American Honey, which is I think it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay, and it stars Sasha Lane. Sorry, let me pull up the plot summary on IMDb.
What's Sasha Lane been in? I recognize that.
I think this is actually her first movie, if I'm not mistaken. She's a youngin'. So the plot summary on IMDb says, Star, a teenage girl with nothing to lose, joins a traveling magazine sales crew and gets caught up in a whirlwind of hard partying, law bending, and young love as she crisscrosses the Midwest with a band of misfits. This film also stars Shia LaBeouf. It was directed by Andrea Arnold. I think she's British, if I'm not mistaken. And I haven't seen any of her other movies. I looked it up afterwards. I really dug American Beauty, actually. It was a really good movie. It's not a perfect movie. There are flaws in it, I think. I think it's a little bit overly long. And the way the story kind of goes towards the about third act of the movie, I didn't really necessarily love. I kind of wish it would have been more about like kind of finding yourself, and it's more a movie about living in the moment, which I think is really cool. And the way it's shot is like super. I really love the way this movie's shot. There's lots of kind of close-ups, unfocused, and it really captures the feeling of kind of like being on the road really, really well. Like I've taken several, pretty spontaneous road trips with some friends before, and I think this movie actually captures it in a way that I don't think any other movie I've seen recently has. So I would probably recommend this to people if you can tackle about a 3-hour movie about something like this. I give it an 8 out of 10, actually. So there's a couple of complaints. Like I said, I don't love where the story went in some parts of it. And I think it's a little bit aimless. I don't really know what to take away from the end of the movie, but pretty solid. Neither of you guys have seen this, have you?
Nope. It's on my to-do list. It looks good. I looked it up. Sasha, this is her first movie, but it looks like it's kind of launching her career in a good direction. She's signed up for 4 movies now. So it looks like she'll have a good year next year.
And then also, what's up?
I hope she got a Transformers contract somewhere in there.
Why would you wish that on somebody, Stephen? Too soon.
Money bags. Someone's got to share with Michael Bay.
But no, I hope she does not, because she was a talented actress, and I really felt a lot for her character in this movie. So I think that wraps up my watch list. So Ryan, what is on your watch list, sir?
Oh, okay. I've only got one. It's another Rogue movie, actually. This week I was feeling a little sick. I was telling Spencer a little bit earlier, all I really wanted to do was just take a break and relax. And so I popped on Mission Impossible Rogue Nation and popped it on and just kind of laid down and vegged and enjoyed some mindless action and such. I really, really love this movie. I've loved all the Mission Impossible movies except for maybe 2, which we won't go into that. But this one was really good. I've really liked the direction they've been going since 3. 3 is probably my favorite one, but I really enjoyed this one. And the team that they've got on, they've really like kind of finally understood what this franchise is and where it should go. So I'm excited to see where it's going to go. Obviously, as long as people keep printing money, Tom Cruise will still be in Mission Impossible movies and they'll keep it going. So I enjoyed it. Overall, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Really enjoyable. It's one of those ones to definitely go catch in the summer season. So look forward to the next one that's coming up. I'm pretty sure both of you have seen it. Do you have any thoughts on it?
You can go ahead and go first, Stephen.
Thank you, Spencer.
You're welcome.
My favorites are 1 and 3, and I like 4 and 5, probably not as much as most people, just because I like the darker tone of 1 and 3, but definitely fun watches. And the stunts are awesome.
Right.
5's my favorite. Rogue Nation is my favorite. Too many Rogue movies, like you said. Thanks for doing that. So yeah, Rogue Nation's my favorite. I'd say number 3 is actually my second favorite. I think that 4 is slightly overrated, but when I saw Rogue Nation, when I walked out of that movie, I was like, man, that was so much fun. Like, that was such a fun action movie. And there's probably one of the best motorcycle chases I've ever seen, like, put to film in that movie. So I like it a lot. I probably like it a little bit more than both of you guys did.
Awesome. Well, this is the moment everyone's been waiting for. Let us move on. We are going to be talking about the highly anticipated. We've been talking about all these Oscar movies coming out. We're going to be talking about like Jackie and La La Land next week. We talked about Manchester by the Sea last week. We're doing those other ones next week. Blah, 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 blah. Spencer, your favorite movie of the year, Collateral Beauty.
Yes, my favorite movie of the year. So I'm going to read the plot of this movie real quick. What is laughably called the plot, I should say. So, retreating from life after a tragedy, a man questions the universe. By writing to love, time, and death, receiving unexpected answers, he begins to see how these things interlock and how even loss can reveal moments of meaning and beauty. That's not the actual plot, but we'll get into that in a minute. We'll start with Stephen. Stephen, what did you think of Collateral Beauty?
All right. So just to preface it, I've heard a little bit of what you guys have said, and I think I agree with you guys. But at the same time, I think I probably enjoyed this more than you. I think there are a lot of flaws to this movie. Partly, it's just let's just put it this way: it's a Hallmark movie with a really good cast. I mean, Kate Winslet is great, Helen Mirren is great, Keira Knightley can be great, and Will Smith can be great. Edward Norton is great, and so that aspect had a lot going for it. Just kind of the plot. It's a Hallmark plot, and you know what?
Is it though?
Sometimes we need a little bit of Hallmark in our lives. I'll get trapped watching a Hallmark with either my mom or my mother-in-law, and I'll admit occasionally I get a little teary-eyed. Collateral Beauty did this for me at one point. But it's true, it is pretentious. You could tell that someone did put a lot of work into this script, but it doesn't fully come together. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, we get mopey Will Smith. It's like I Am Legend without the zombies. So if you want some more of that, and you don't get the cool or the extra emotional dog dying scene, it's his child. But
Okay, so Ryan, let's move into your thoughts.
Okay. I did like it less than you. I will admit there was one moment where I don't know if I like almost shed a tear because it hit me or if it was just so late and I was so tired. There was a tear that started forming in my eye at one point that we'll get into in a second when we go spoilers. But overall, it was a very laughable attempt at a movie. I'm looking up the writer right now. I agree with what you said. I feel like he probably did put a lot of time into the script, but I don't know where that went because the script was the biggest issue in this whole movie. It ended up looking like a Hallmark movie, but it was so pretentious and it wanted to be something else. I said pre-show, we looked it up actually. Me and Spencer looked it up before we started recording. How many Oscars have these people been nominated for and won, Spencer?
So between just the top 8 listed cast of Collateral Beauty, there have been 7 Oscar nominations and 2 Oscar wins.
And this is what we get out of that. I mean, you can go into this thinking, whoa, this is going to be awesome. Look at these people. Just looking at the poster, like, there's so much talent involved. And then you get the screenwriter from such classics as The Switch and Just Go With It and Here Comes the Boom. And he tries to write this thing that he wants to be like this Inception-esque kind of like, I want them to walk out of here thinking, and I need to surprise them. I'm going to pull a trick out of M. Night Shyamalan's book. I don't know what it was going for. I tried to watch it once and I fell asleep, so I had to go see it again. And I sat through it and I ended up not liking it. Not going into spoilers, that's my thoughts.
Okay, well, I'll get into mine real quick. Before getting into spoilers, it's just a really quick thing. I'm going to describe to you what watching Collateral Beauty was like to me. So basically, I felt like I was on an inner tube behind a boat with a blind guy driving who couldn't find the throttle, and a guy with like no arms is giving him directions, like saying, "We're gonna hit a wall, turn," and you're jerked around on the inner tube, like screaming the entire time in fear for your life. But the amputee guy can't stop the boat because he can't grab the throttle, and the blind guy, like, he's trying to give him the directions to tell him where the throttle is, but he has to steer the boat. That's how watching Collateral Beauty feels. So let's just go ahead and get
a movie about that.
let's go ahead and get into spoilers, because I can't talk about this movie without spoilers. So we open with the scene of Will Smith saying that the key to making a great advertisement is love, death, and time. And I kind of sat there like, wait, what do you mean by that? And I guess in a way he was talking about connecting to other people, okay? Then the camera does like a 360 around Will Smith, and we go from like the young, charming, like awesome Will Smith to like the old, gray, haggard Will Smith who doesn't talk. And he's setting up this giant dominoes formation, and he knocks it over. He turns around and he doesn't even watch the dominoes knocking over. Okay? Now, his friends, played by Kate Winslet, Michael Pena, and Edward Norton, decide that since they have to sell the company's shares to a bigger company, they are going to hire 3 actors to like manipulate their friend into thinking he is talking to time, love, and death, who he has been writing letters to. I forgot to mention, they hired a private investigator to follow this poor man who is trying to grieve the death of his child. So they hire these people to film them and digitally remove them from the film to make
iPhone.
With an iPhone to make him appear incompetent.
You guys never done that?
To make him appear incompetent, to not like be able to have his timeshare so they can sell it to a company. These are his friends doing this to him, his best friends in the world, and they're doing this to a guy who lost a child. Like, it is the most immoral act I think I've ever seen at the center of a movie. So you guys, I don't know. I don't know if I think it's inspiring at all, because what they are doing to this guy is so objectively horrible. The only worst thing they could do is murder him for his timeshares. There's like nothing else I have to say. This movie makes no sense whatsoever, people.
But he figures it out, and in an instant, he forgives them. So it's worth it, right?
No, he doesn't figure it out. They never tell him. Kate Winslet, at the end, in the meeting with the board, she's about to crack, and then he gives them piercingly insightful monologues about like their lives and how they need to move on from all these events that have happened in their lives. And he like tells them basically all this like mumbo jumbo monologue, Oscar bait BS.
Yeah.
They don't tell him. They never tell him at any point, yo, dude, you're not crazy. We hired people to do this. And in the biggest coincidence of all time, they happen to I guess Love, Death, and Time, the concepts happen to guess that he was writing letters to them and hiring like Keira Knightley coming into, I mean, I guess the final twist at the end of the movie, which I guess, should we just talk about that real quick?
Go for it. We've passed that point.
So at the end of the movie, we find out that actually the 3 actors who were set up to play Love, Death, and Time are actually indeed Love, Death, and Time. But everything that happened before that,
but they're also in the Power Rangers.
yeah. Ryan talks. He's referencing a shot at the end of the movie.
I'll get into that. I'll let you finish, and then I'll get into that when it's
okay. So no, I don't have much more to say other than the plot twist made no sense because the actors, first of all, they still accept the payments. They accept the payment from a dying man who's gonna need the money. Like the last thing that Helen Mirren does is take the check from the guy, like who's dying. She's dead, and she takes the money from a dying man whose family needs that money. It's like, is it inspiring? Is it really that inspiring?
That was my biggest issue with the movie, was that I felt like it was way too coincidental, and I didn't like that everything. They have this big group meeting where they decide, oh, we're going to hire you as actors. Okay. And then just coincidentally, everyone splits up into teams, and Death goes with the guy who's dying, and Love goes with the guy who's horny. And everyone like pairs up, and then, oh, all of a sudden these actors who really are these emotions or whatever start helping these people through their lives so that they can help this guy through his life. And it was so muddy. And the part that I walked out, I had to grab the closest usher to me because the ending of the movie, I didn't even stay for the credits. Like, I didn't even watch the credits roll because this shot happens, and then I'm guessing there's like 15 seconds left of the movie before the credits, but I knew it was ending, so I just walked out. But there's this shot where it pans up from Will Smith, and the first plot twist is, oh, this girl that he's been talking to, oh, it's his wife. Woohoo! And so they're like walking under this bridge together, and they're in love again or whatever. And the camera pans up to reveal those 3, the what are they? Time, Love, and Death, standing together, and they look exactly like the Power Rangers on top of the bridge. And it just pans up, and they're standing there like all iconic like. And I was like, oh my gosh, shared universe. This is totally a prequel to the Power Rangers. That's why they made this movie. And I couldn't take it past that point. So I walked out, and I started talking to the ushers and stuff. But that's kind of the whole movie, was it took itself way too seriously. So I want to go to Stephen. I want to hear your spoiler thoughts if you have any remainder ones. And then Stephen and then Spencer, tell us about your theory, your parody theory.
So the last twist was okay in my opinion. I think there were a lot of contradicting things. That's a great point you made about the money, Spencer. But the second and last twist, that did not work at all for me. I just, it didn't really make that much sense to me, and I don't think there was enough clarity of how it fit into everything. Yeah. You guys are very wise and summed it up very well.
Well, ranted about it very well.
Yeah, I feel like I probably went on too much of a rant and covered basically everything. I'm sorry, people. This movie was bad. It was really bad.
Give us a score.
My score is 1 out of 10. I hate this movie. I think this movie is one of the worst movies I've seen in a very long. It's borderline like. I think it's insane. I think my theory, I was talking to Ryan before this. I think my theory is that they're trolling us as an audience. They made a spoof of like an Oscar bait movie, and this is the result. The writer wrote The Switch. He wrote, what else? He wrote a couple comedy movies. This ain't no comedy, but it is. It almost is a comedy. But I also would say it's not a movie that's so bad it's good. Don't see this. Do not watch this movie. Please, don't go see it.
I give it a 4 out of 10. A little bit better. Like I said, there was one moment where he's signing the papers after his friends rip him off, and he signs his shares over to them, and then he signs another paper, and everyone gets all emotional, and then they're like, oh, what was that second paper he signed? And he's like, oh, he gave some shares to his daughter, and that was the paper he signed acknowledging she was dead. And I was like, oh, that got to me. That was actually pretty powerful. But at the same time, everything else was kind of such a joke. It didn't really mean anything to me. So I could understand where they were going and what they wanted me to feel, but it didn't quite make it there for me. I felt like, I don't know, I gave Christmas Party a 5. And I enjoyed that a lot more than this. So I was like, there's no way I could even get close to a 5. So 4 is what I got it. Stephen, what are you giving it?
So I gave it a 5.5. I think there definitely is an audience for this movie. The theater was full of old people, and walking out, they're like, what do you think of that movie, honey? It was very, very inspiring. I think there are people that could benefit from this movie. There's someone next to me in the movie that was crying for about a fourth of it. So as many problems as this movie does have, I think in my book, it deserves a 5.5.
Deal. Awesome. All right. We've made it past that. Let us move on. I want to, before I get into reading the synopsis, I just want to take a minute and have everyone look at that poster. That poster right there is one of my favorite posters of the year, if not my favorite poster of the year. That is so beautiful. And the thing that this movie and all Star Wars movies have been really good at lately has been their marketing and how the public has perceived them. So that's been really awesome. Getting into kind of the synopsis, I don't want to read it. I want to kind of explain it a little bit more, because I think I had the benefit, and I'm still up in the air. This is kind of a pro and a con for me. I read Catalyst beforehand. I think walking away from the movie, I would definitely recommend everyone go and see this movie, enjoy it for what it is, then go read Catalyst and then watch it again. Because I initially had walked out and I thought, oh, if you didn't read Catalyst, I don't know if this is going to make much sense to you. But it's had such great reviews, and everyone's walked away with it with such great thoughts. I take back that statement and that thought, and I think you should go in and you should enjoy it for how it is. And then if you go read Catalyst, it's going to unravel so many more layers, and you're going to love this movie a second time. So kind of a brief explanation. Catalyst is a book that was written by John Lucino that came out about a month ago, and it's kind of the prequel to Rogue One, where it goes through Galen and Lyra Ursa's life. Now, Galen is one of the top researchers of kyber crystals. And so the Empire goes and they contact him to try and get him to help them develop a super weapon to bring peace to the galaxy. They want this super weapon so that they can be the ultimate power. So the whole book of Catalyst is them trying to persuade and get Galen to come help them. And they use Orson Krennic to do that. Galen and Orson kind of went to high school and college together. It's not called that, but it's the equivalent of that in Star Wars universe. And so they have this big old back history that makes Rogue One even more impactful. So Rogue One takes place starting 15 years after the book ends. You've got Galen, who's in full force with the Empire. His daughter, Jyn, who is out with Saw Gerrera, who we've seen in the Clone Wars series. And it's the start of the rebellion. This is the prequel to number 4. And Pablo Hidalgo said about 2 months ago that this movie will literally end 10 minutes before episode 4 takes place. So that's kind of the timeline in the Star Wars universe. This is going to start about a week or so before. It does get to play with time a little bit, but the bulk of the story is about a week before episode 4 starts, leading up to episode 4. So that's Rogue One for you in a nutshell. Let's go to Stephen first. We're going to go through our thoughts, all of us, and then we'll score it, and then we'll go hardcore spoilers. So Stephen, what were your thoughts on Rogue One?
So I really liked this movie. My nerd alert was going off a lot. There were lots of Easter eggs in it that were very rewarding while not being like blatantly Easter eggs to the point where it distracts from the flow of the movie. The acting was really good. And to be honest, in the trailers, I was talking to you about this earlier, Ryan. My biggest worry was for Donnie Yen's character. Just because in the trailers I felt like the delivery of one or two of his lines wasn't the best. But this guy made it for me. He was awesome. Just like his pseudo Jedi beliefs.
Force is one with me.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. And I think him and his buddy, they were such a good inclusion to this movie. It was, in my opinion, it was a throwback to the Kurosawa influences on A New Hope. Now, it's kind of hard for me to watch a Star Wars movie, especially any new one, just because I nitpick it. I think I might be the most judgmental is not the right word, but just like nitpicky with Star Wars, just because it's my baby. And so maybe we'll go into a few of those during spoilers, but just one of the overall ones is not all the time did I feel like I knew the objective of the team or of Jyn Erso or where they're going next or why they're going there. And I feel like especially A New Hope, you know, from the beginning to the end, what Luke's intentions are, what his motives are, Han, Leia, and so that was really clear. And then in this case, I feel like I should be able to follow a Star Wars movie really well, just because I've been obsessed with it since I was about 5. And there were certain parts where I'm like, okay, what are they trying to do now? But that wasn't the whole movie. A lot of it was pretty clear to me.
So I guess I'll go into my thoughts. This movie is amazing. I really, really dug Rogue One. I think it's just as good, if not better, than Episode 7. I think also this is the movie that I wanted Suicide Squad to be. Kind of like the team of people who aren't necessarily all Class A citizens in some ways, and seeing them come together and have to overcome things. I really dug every character in this movie.
Well, let me just chime in for a second. That's one thing that I really loved. It felt like the Dirty Dozen or the Magnificent Seven in that aspect, and I loved that. I loved that about this.
Yeah, and we'll probably get more into our thoughts on that in spoilers, but this is the Star Wars prequel that I feel like everybody's always wanted. So we need to like invent the Men in Black tool so we can erase the George Lucas episode 1, 2, and 3 from our memory, because this seriously, it does what every prequel should do. And in some ways, this is one of the best prequels I think I've ever seen, because it retroactively somehow makes A New Hope better. Because A New Hope is a perfect movie. And there are lots of ways where this is the polar opposite of A New Hope in lots of directions, especially like the ending, which we'll get into spoilers, like I said. But I love this movie. I thought the characters were great, as I said. All of them had a very specific task that they had to do in the third act. And so I've heard some people's complaints be they don't feel the characters were well enough developed. But I guess my rebuttal to that would be that this is a standalone story in the Star Wars universe. And it proves to people who have like Ryan read the books or like me played some of these video games, that we can tell a story in this universe about characters other than the Skywalkers and have it be a giant, crazy, awesome success. Like, it's
$155 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
What did Force Awakens get? 300?
I think it was like 220 or something.
Yeah, Force
That's
Awakens.
really good for a spin-off, though.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like I don't know. I feel like all the characters they introduced brought something to this movie, and they brought something to that third act, and the third act of this movie is so good. Like, it is literally like everything I've wanted in a Star Wars movie. My complaints would be there are two characters who are CG. They're humans, but they're CG characters, and it took me out of the movie every single time. We'll reveal who the characters were later, but yeah, that took me out basically every time I had to see one of them. So
awesome. So I'll briefly go and then switch over into scores, and then we'll go spoilers. So I loved this movie, and initially I walked out of it and I did say I loved this more than episode 7. Now, what I said to Spencer pre-show was that I didn't trust myself coming out of this, because it does end so well that I had to step back, and I thought to myself that this could have had a very, very crappy first act. And because the third act was so good, I would have forgotten about the first act, and I still would have called it as amazing as I called it. Since then, I've been able to think about it and see it again, and it holds up. And I definitely think that it is better than episode 7. I loved this movie. I've been talking about ranking them and stuff, and I would rank Empire, then Jedi, then Rogue One, then A New Hope. This movie was so good to me. I have a list of things that I do want to talk about, but a lot of them I would like to talk about freely. So I'm going to say I really loved the acting, specifically the leads, and I think Felicity Jones is not going to get as much credit as she deserves. There's one scene in particular that we can go into later that she is she's watching a holo, and just her reaction is money, and it sets up the whole movie, and does establish that she was such a great choice for this role. My one kind of meh, besides what you talked about with the CG actually got better for me. The very first was very jarring, and kind of the end was jarring, but what it comes down to for that was eventually I kind of forgot, and it kind of swept over me. So it wasn't that big of a deal with me. My biggest, and I don't want to say this is a gripe by any means, but I wasn't a huge fan of K2SO. I know a lot of people loved him, and I'm going to get a lot of crap for that, but I didn't enjoy him as much as everyone else. Then my one big downside is spoiler heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and score this, and I'm going to score a 9 out of 10. This was a awesome movie. You need to go out and see this multiple times in the theater and experience this. It is not a kid's movie. That being said, if you're comfortable taking your kids to go see like the Avengers or something like that, they could totally go see this movie. And I think you should take them to this movie, because Star Wars has changed a lot of our lives. And if you can introduce your kids to this as their first Star Wars movie, it will literally change their life. So that's my review. Let's go Stephen, then Spencer, then spoilers.
So I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I think there are some very, very strong aspects to this movie. But what Spencer mentioned with the CGI, that was my biggest problem. And I think the CGI in this was more distracting to me than any of the CGI in the prequels, which is kind of saying a lot. And then just also what I said about some of the characters not knowing what their objectives were. Otherwise, I'd score it higher. But this is a strong movie. I'm amazed that it survived all those reshoots. And everyone that comes out, just exiting a theater. We work at a movie theater, Ryan and I, and they just have a smile. You know, even the people that usually have like the faces, they're smiling. And so this movie worked, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I'll just say this is basically, by the end of this movie, by like the third act, I really feel like this gave me everything I've ever wanted in a Star Wars movie, like especially specific things I'll get into. I like this more than they did. I'm giving this one a 9.2 out of 10. I was so excited especially after kind of thinking more about this movie. The more I think about, the more I admire it. I can't wait to see this movie again. I agree with basically everything that they said, except I think K2SO is awesome.
Well, I think he's awesome, but people are walking out saying that he's the best part of the movie. And
yeah, I don't agree with that.
At some points, it was just like, oh, you're trying a little too hard with that line, or he's coming off a little too much like C-3PO or whatever. But it just didn't work as well for me as everyone else.
Fair
I think
enough. Go ahead,
think I think I'm in between with K2 because I think half of his lines nailed it, or especially jokes nailed it, and then the other half were like, that was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like
right.
So let's get into spoilers. You guys down?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to start off by saying you guys are jerks because he sacrificed himself for everybody to hold. Like he literally he gave his life for the rebellion. People, like consider what you just said about him.
Okay.
We care, but maybe we care a little bit more if he was funny every time. You know?
Every time. But that was such a great thing, was because he actually ended up having a character arc. A robot had an arc that he went from the beginning of being this, stuck up robot that only cared about protocol or whatever, to the end where he died for the rebellion. And you saw that as he kept getting shot and going down. And it was emotional. I will admit that was out of a lot. Okay. We're going spoilers, so I'm saying I knew everyone was going to die. Like, for those of you who were kind of unsure, there was no way. I had my fears that they would pull a Disney and some people would survive, but there was no way people were surviving. And out of all the deaths, that was one of the more emotional deaths for me, was K2SO.
So you knew everybody was going to die. Because I had that shocked me. Like, I totally was expecting at the end when Cassian and Jin are leaving the place, I was like, oh, they're going to find that one TIE fighter, and be able to escape the atmosphere before anything happens. And no, it didn't happen. And I sat there and I was like, what? That took guts. That took courage for them to do that.
Well, I think that made it more satisfying after you see that Cassian survives that long drop, and also that they escaped that Jeddah. It's like, okay, so yeah, they kind of have two lives, but not every time. The sacrifice meant something.
Yeah,
I guess I just assumed that none of them were in episode 4 and they're not even mentioned, so that I assumed no one was going to make it out. But I had that fear that Disney was going to pull a Marvel thing and not let anyone die, or find some weird, creative, unnecessary
crap out of it.
Yeah, like have them say, well, we need to put Jin into hiding now because the Empire will forever be looking for her, and then like take her like away. And like I was waiting for that, and I was like, oh, you better not. And then they didn't do it, and I was honestly shocked. I was shocked by the ending of this movie, and at the same time, it's it's a big deal to see something like this in a Disney, like Star Wars movie, where they wipe out literally the entire cast, but for a reason and a purpose. And now when you go back and you watch A New Hope, you're going to have so much like information and references from this, and the sacrifice that the rebellion has made now. And I think that that's just like, it does what a prequel should do, which is make the original films better. So
I want to leapfrog off of kind of what you were just saying. You were talking about the ending when Jin and Cassian, right? That's
Cassian and Andor, I think.
So those two, as soon as Krennic is shot and he's laying there, and Diego Luna grabs her and he's like pulling her back and he's like, no, don't. I got so scared at that moment. And I even turned to the person who was sitting next to me in the theater and I said, if they kiss, this whole movie has been ruined for me. And that's my one downside, was I feel like on the second watch, it stood out even more. There was some weird sexual tension between those two characters that was completely unnecessary. That just drove me nuts, that I didn't feel like there needed to be any love. They had gone through this together and they were good and they were partners and they made it out, but they never needed to have any kind of look of love in their eyes. They never needed to love each other, or I guess the hug at the end really worked. But if they would have kissed right at the end when they were dying, that would have ruined it.
See, I think it's more them just like it's more in another life. Maybe it could have worked out. I don't think it was necessarily I didn't get the vibe that there were too many like romantic undertones, because I think Cassian Andor is a character who his whole purpose in life is to complete the objective that he has. And from the first scene we see him in, we know he'll do whatever it takes to like do his job, to a point where it's almost jarring. Like the first scene where he shoots that other rebel soldier, it's like, this guy, like, I mean, it's the Han Solo shot Greedo first, but at the same time, in this one, he's killing a man on his own team, like essentially, because the guy's injured and might blab.
Was he a rebel though, or was he just what do you call it?
Impartial informant. I thought
he was an informant, so it was still bad, but I don't think he was a rebel.
I guess, but I that part, just like when I first saw him, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like this guy. And by the end of the movie, he was one of my favorite characters. Diego Luna, the actor who plays him, he just looks like he belongs in the Star Wars universe. Like all of them do, I thought.
And so, what a great way to open the movie, because I mean everything. I could go on for an hour about how this movie should have had an opening crawl. And I get what they were going, and I know Kathleen Kennedy has done a lot of talking about why they didn't do the opening crawl. This really needed one, and that could have been the only better opening. But to start off with, the cinematography is different from any other. It's handheld. You've got very long focal lengths. You're very close in with the characters. You've got a very, the depth of field is very, very brilliant. And you're up close and bam, he freaking shoots the guy. Cold-blooded murder. Shoots him. And then we start off into this new episode that has nothing, it has everything but nothing to do with everything else. It's this whole new thing. It opens so many doors for Star Wars in the future. They can do anything now. And I love, that is on the top of my list of great things about this. How did you guys feel about the opening? Do you think there should have been a crawl?
I personally don't. I completely understand why they did that. And I think that this movie does a really good job of starting off and being like, okay, we are in the Star Wars universe, and like I didn't personally, like I had heard rumors that there might be an opening crawl, but I didn't know it was confirmed that there wasn't going to be one. So when it said a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was like, are they going to do it? And they don't. But the way that they open, I think, is so cool that I was just like, oh, whatever, I don't care, because we're back in Star Wars. We're in the Star Wars universe, so it didn't matter to me.
What'd you think, Stephen?
I'm with Spencer. I think it would have been nice to have some context, because some people went into that movie and they didn't even know where it fit into the timeline. And so for that reason, I agree with you. But overall, I think it's important to differentiate it enough from the actual episodes.
Okay. So I totally agree with both of that. And I feel like I think they should have stuck that. I feel like they took a weird middle ground of not having the crawl, but we're still going to have the title card and the far, far away. And the title card where it's like, Rogue One. It looks like it was made in Windows Movie Maker or Paint. That was probably...
It looked bad. I didn't notice it looking bad.
I thought it looked just as bad.
I didn't think it looked too bad either, but maybe I'll have to go back and see it again and pay more attention.
But it is kind of weird to have just like okay, let's do some kind of opening theme, but let's cut it really short. Keep it to 5 seconds. Like Dun, 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 dun.
That just fades out the
They're
sound.
moving
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you guys about is one of the biggest complaints from Star Wars fans for the series has been the flaw in the Death Star in A New Hope. And this movie explains it, and I thought it did a really good job of explaining that. Were you satisfied with the way they explained that?
Go for it, Stephen.
So I think thematically it fit very well because what's the dude's name? The Death Star plan builder?
Galen Erso.
Yeah, because it was kind of an act of love, and so it fit thematically into the story. It's a very logical solution, and it's not detracting from A New Hope in any way. I thought that was a really smart move. My issue now, and we could go into gripes about Force Awakens, which I really like that movie, but I have some gripes with it. One of them is, how the frick are they going to explain how it was even easier to blow up that planet than it was to blow up the original Death Star, when they went to all that work to establish why the first Death Star did have that flaw.
Right.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I don't know how they're going to tackle. I don't think they're going to tackle.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, the one.
Maybe the First Order, they're just a bunch of noobs or something.
I see, and Bloodlines, the book Bloodlines, kind of goes into depth of how the First Order comes to be, but it doesn't even scratch that they're building another planet or anything like that. And I think Star Wars is done with that. I think Lucasfilm is done with that. They're going to move on.
I hope and pray. I really do hope.
I loved how they tied everything in with this one, and I think it worked, especially reading Catalyst, because Krennic was after Galen for most of his life, for all of Jin's life. This movie starts when Jin's probably 5 or 6 or something like that, and since she was born, Krennic rescues Galen and then is on him, trying to get him on board for this plan her whole life. And so and he always has that pull. He's never identified with the Separatists. He's never identified with the Empire, but throughout the book, he's persuaded, and you hear about it a little bit in Rogue One, how he was persuaded to join the Empire in his hologram. And I think that all makes sense, that it was out of love, that it was something that he decided he was going to do so that he could do the back door and make this thing possible. So I think it really paid off and worked.
Well, and to come back into the Rogue One and how it played out in the movie, I think that Orson Krennic's death scene, dying at the hands of his own Death Star, and him looking up into the sky and seeing it, and then just blasting the tower away, that was awesome. I was just that's what's up.
Sorry, it just shows where the Empire's loyalties, or how they work.
Exactly. Yeah, they're willing to kill all of their own guys just to try to wipe out an entire planet of people just to secure the plans of their weapon.
I'm glad that you guys got that out of it without reading the books, because the books add such another layer to it. You don't have to read the books, but if you read Catalyst, it explains that the Death Star is Krennic's baby. And he fought through his whole life to make this and then to take over. And that scene with him and Darth Vader, he's like, I'm still going to be in charge of this, right? You could tell he's scared to death of Vader, but he's like, this is my baby. You got to let me with this. And then you read Tarkin, or you read Lords of the Sith, and you know that Vader and Tarkin are tight. Those two know each other, and they've gone through a lot together. And you see this parallel, and Tarkin's in a little bit of Catalyst, and you see this rivalry coming up of Krennic thinks he's going to be in charge, but Tarkin's like, the Empire likes me more. I'm a Grand Moff. Come on, let's be serious here. And then to see it all lead up to this awesome moment where Tarkin's like, kill him, blow it up. And then it shoots, and and then they have this pull out shot where the planet looks just like the Death Star with all the ripples.
Oh shoot,
Like,
I didn't catch that. That's
it
cool.
is so
Yeah, I didn't catch that either.
You'll have to watch it again because it pulls out and you just have this dimple of where it exploded, and you see the planet, but it's got the circular part that the Death Star has where the weapon is. And I was like, oh my gosh, Krennic was on that. Jeez.
Gareth Edwards, dude, that guy has an eye. He understands how to visually make a movie. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think he has a really firm understanding of scale. Like, there lots of the shots that they show us are down on the ground with these rebel soldiers when there's these giant AT-ATs. And, you know, furthermore, we see like star cruisers up next to the Death Star, and we see how tiny those are compared to the Death Star. And then we see how tiny X-Wings are compared to those Imperial cruisers. And then we see how small people are compared to X-Wings. And it's like, this guy has such a firm understanding of scale, and it even shows through in Godzilla, the 2014, which was a movie I did not like at all. But this one, I think it works even better because, you know, it's something that, especially as somebody who's played a lot of Battlefront and like video games and Star Wars, I've been in a situation where, you know, the rebels at the end of the movie where you're in a hallway and a lightsaber turns on, you're like, oh, I'm going to die. I'm about to die. And then Darth Vader just comes down the hallway and like starts hacking everybody to pieces. And it's terrifying. So that scene when that happened in the movie and Darth Vader just kills all those rebel soldiers, I was like, oh boy, yeah, this is scary. This is how I want to see Darth Vader like portrayed as a villain.
That is the moment that I was waiting for the whole movie that I'm glad was there. I like jumped up and I was like, yeah, yes. And then he like, oh my gosh, I can't get enough of that scene because he like freaking forces this guy onto the ceiling and starts like doing everything else and then forgets that he's holding this guy on the ceiling, takes out his lightsaber, chops him in half. Oh my god. It was so cool. That is the moment I was waiting for, and I'm so glad it was just that moment because this movie, as much as I wanted it to be about Vader, didn't need to be about Vader.
And that scene,
it totally explains why he's so pissed off at the beginning of 4. He just slayed a bunch of rebels trying to get the plans. He was this close to getting the plans back, and they release and they take off. And then episode 4 starts. He's out there. He's out for blood, and he's just like, awesome. One thing before you go, Stephen, that you were talking about, Spencer, the cruisers and stuff and the scale and stuff. That was also a brilliant scene where they're like, there's this huge thing coming out of hyperspace. Then you see the Death Star. Everyone starts making the jump to hyperspeed, and then this huge cruiser shows up, and people start crashing into it, and you can.
That was brilliant. That was awesome.
So good.
It makes you see, and the opening crawl of Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope talks about how depleted the resources the rebels are, and you definitely see that in this movie. Stephen, I think you had a thought you wanted to add.
Ryan covered it well, but the Darth Vader scene, that wasn't superfluous at all. That needed to be there, and it fit really well, and it was awesome. Man, like some things like for example, railing on X-Men Apocalypse, the Wolverine scene, that was cool, but that wasn't necessary. It didn't drive anything forward.
Definitely. So I think it goes to say, if you've already seen Star Wars Rogue One, you should see it again, but we are all very positive on this movie. It's a great blockbuster, guys. It's a lot of fun. I really myself dug it, and it sounds like these two did as well. Anybody got any last thoughts on Rogue One before we wrap up?
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly say that I came out of this movie a little bit nervous that I loved it so much because I had read the book, and that I had loved it so much because I was a fan. But since then, I've received numerous texts from friends who are not enthralled and engulfed in the Star Wars universe, who said this was the Star Wars movie we needed as people who are not super fans. This is the movie that the casual fans needed, and I'm so relieved by that. I do quickly I have a list. I want to quickly read through my favorite things and some things that were meh for me that you can tweet me about. I'll throw up my thing. If you want to start a conversation, tweet me there since we're wrapping up this video. My favorite parts, Jin, when she's watching the hollow of her dad, Galen, the moment between both of them, the acting is phenomenal, and how that scene was executed was great. I loved when Diego Luna's character kills the informant right at the beginning. What a way to establish the movie. Darth Vader, brilliant. I loved how seamless and well it led into episode 4. We didn't really get much into it. The CGI they use for they show Princess Leia and they show Tarkin. It's jarring. The technology isn't perfect. My opinion on it is that it was needed, and I'm glad they did it. We're just not quite there yet. Catalyst, watch the movie, read Catalyst, and then watch the movie again. It'll unlock a ton for you. I loved that they had factions of the rebellion. It wasn't black and white. It wasn't the rebellion is this white thing. The Empire is this black thing. It was a war movie, and you could see that there was layers within layers of people and factions. And they talk about Saw Gerrera being an extremist in the rebellion, which is actually causing problems for the rebellion. And I loved that they went that in depth, and that Gareth Edwards did that. K2SO was awesome, an emotional death. Some of the lines didn't hit as well as I hoped. The score, I liked. There were moments on the second watch where I was like, maybe that score, I miss John Williams. And granted, this guy had like 4 weeks to put the score together for this big movie. So it's kind of like understandable that it wasn't as impactful as I wanted. And then my only real big downside to the movie was that I sensed romantic chemistry that I felt was unnecessary at the end. So those are my thoughts. Tweet me at Rye_Gordon and follow me on Instagram. Same thing. Thank you for watching. Stephen, where can they find you? What grocery store can they locate you at?
Grocery store?
Well, you don't have a Twitter.
Oh, come say hi to me at Cinemark. I'm usually sweeping up popcorn. I'd love to talk.
Right on. So you guys can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHind, or you can follow me on Instagram, Spencer Henderson, all lowercase. What are we talking? Are we doing a episode next week since it's Christmas Day?
I don't know.
we'll probably, I imagine we'll be posting an episode at the beginning of next week. People.
Yeah. It'll either be Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday or something like that. But we will have an episode. We're hoping La La Land and Jackie. But it's limited release, and Oscars are so hard, especially since we live in different states. It's kind of hard to all see the same movies, but we are hoping La La Land and Jackie this coming week. So, and
I think also Passengers and Fences are being released as well. So we'll definitely be talking about those two as well, I imagine.
Yeah. So we will definitely tweet out. Stephen, are you available, and do you want to join next week's episode?
Yes, sir. I'm down.
Okay. You heard it here first. Stephen will be here. Spencer will be here. I will be here. Next week's going to be awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to comment down below. This, obviously, we went spoilers. So tell us your thoughts. What did you think about Rogue One? And why are you not going to see Collateral Beauty? Spencer, wrap us up.
Yeah, guys, just like Ryan said, like, comment, subscribe, share. Want to see some more comments, people. And tell us what you thought of Rogue One. And share this with your friends. Spoilers are kind of fun to talk about, so we will reply to you in the comments if you give us your insight on the movie. So anyways, guys, thanks. Make sure to tune in next time. See you later.